I've got all these tomatoes here from the garden. What are we going to do with them? I'm going to show you how to make a classic dish, an Italian tomato saucy kind of pasta. Real simple, real fresh. Let's get cooking. It's hard to beat the sweetness and just the summer flavor of a cherry tomato, a good cherry tomato. These are good cherry tomatoes. I've never had cherry tomatoes as good as these. I like to eat them like candy. Normally, I've never been a fan of cherry tomatoes until I started growing some varieties that are known for their sweetness and for their summer kind of perkiness. There's just such an explosion of flavor. These are called EDOX, E-D-O-X. It's an F1 hybrid. I grew these from seed. You can get the seeds at Johnny Seeds. And they are profuse. They produce tons of trusses of these great summer tomatoes. So what we're going to do is make a classic pasta dish. And the Italians, I've watched dozens and dozens of videos on YouTube of how authentic chefs, authentic Italians, and those who have picked up good cooking skills make this dish. So I'm going to show you my take on it. It's really easy, and man, these tomatoes, you can't go wrong. What we're going to try to do is preserve that summer taste. We're not going to overcook them. We're not going to make render them down into an hours-long cooked tomato sauce. We're going to cook them whole, or we're going to cut them in half, but we're going to cook them, and we're not going to really blend them up. And then we're going to add our pasta directly into the pan with the tomatoes, and that's it. Well, here are the main ingredients of this dish, aside from the pasta. Fresh tomatoes, cherry tomatoes especially. These have such a sweet summer flavor. You can't really beat a fresh vine-ripened cherry tomato. They're incredible. These are so sweet. I'm going to use cherry tomatoes today. Maybe put a few of these in there. Basil, got some fresh basil from the garden. A couple of onions, small onions, medium onion ought to do. However much garlic you like, I'm going with 3 cloves, some salt and some pepper, some olive oil. That's going to form the basis of our dish here, and let me show you what we're going to do. First things first, I need to wash these and find some really good ones in here. Some of these have actually been sitting here for a while, but I want to inspect every single one of them and make sure that I don't have any imperfections. I'm going to go ahead and dice up some onions. These are onions from the garden as well, and they're rather small, so I'm going to use 3 small onions. You could use a medium to large onion if you want. With this dish, you'll want a little more olive oil than you think. I'm going to cover the bottom of my pan with olive oil, and I'm going to put it on medium. Don't want it to cook too hot. Don't want it to get to the smoking point. I just want it on medium. And we'll put our onions right in there. Meanwhile, we'll get some garlic ready. Smash it and peel it. We'll set this aside. We don't need it just yet. And that might be a little much. I think my eyes are bigger than my stomach right now. I'm referencing how much tomatoes I have. Let's start cutting these up now. I'm just going to cut them in half. You can cut them in quarters if you want. And it doesn't matter how you cut them, lengthwise or otherwise or crosswise. Just cut them in half. Get all our tomatoes cut. Look how red they are all through. These are beautiful tomatoes. I've never seen a tomato quite as ripe as that. I mean, that's crazy ripe. That's what I'm after right there. And pay attention to your onions as they heat up over there. You don't want them to get burnt. You don't want them to get browned and caramelized so much as you want them just to get clear. And once they start getting clear, we'll put that garlic in there and let that infuse. We're cooking on low heat. If you cook garlic on high heat and burn it, it gets bitter. That's why a lot of chefs will put garlic in near the end of cooking if they're cooking with higher heat. Okay, our onions are starting to get a little bit transparent. Now I'm going to add our garlic. Again, we're cooking on medium heat, so we don't have to worry about the garlic getting bitter. I'm going to turn on my pasta water a little bit higher now, get it ready. Always salt your pasta water. Alright, we're going to put our tomatoes in now. There we go. Now what we're going to do is just let these render down a little bit until they start to release their juices. Might bump the heat just a little bit. This will take a little while, 20 minutes or so. About halfway through, I'm expecting 20 minutes. I've seen guys cook these for 20 minutes, 30 minutes. It just depends on your tomatoes and how hot you're cooking them. Never forget salt. I'm going to put some salt in there. This salt will also help to draw out the moisture from the tomatoes as they cook there. That's what salt does. It extracts moisture from your food. Are you amazed at how red that is? Because I am. Man, I wish I had smell-o-vision. I wish you could smell this. Perhaps you can see that I've changed pans. Yeah, that pan was a little bit shallow. I need a little bit more space, and you'll see why that's important when we put our pasta in here. I need this height. So, make sure you've got enough room. This is rendering down nicely. Tomatoes are getting soft. You can mash them up a little bit if you want. Once they start getting really soft, we want to get our pasta in. Some people like to take a potato masher and go in and mash up the tomatoes. You can do that if you want, but I'm not going to do that this time. If I need anything crushed, I'll just kind of go in with my spoon. Now, a lot of these tomatoes are rendering themselves into ultimately what seems to be liquid. Some of them are a little more firm. When the firm ones start to get soft, that's when we'll start boiling our noodles. I'm going to be using fettuccine. You could use any kind of pasta, linguine, angel hair pasta, spaghetti, macaroni, I guess, if you wanted to. Any pasta. I'm using fettuccine. Got my water to a rolling boil. Got about a tablespoon of salt in there. Salted water is always good. Let's get our noodles in. About 10 minutes. You want to get them to just before they're al dente, because what we'll do is finish cooking them off in our sauce. As I'm cooking this, these tomatoes are getting losing their form, and that's what we want. We want them to have just enough form to have substance in our food, but we want enough liquid into the pan to be like a sauce, and that's what we've got. Looking great. Let's make sure we stir our noodles. At this point, I want to get some black pepper in there. All right, pasta is ready. So what we're going to do is give our tomatoes a little more heat, and we're going to transfer our pasta. You don't even have to strain it. In fact, that liquid is not bad for this dish at all. Just put it right on in there. All right, now look at this. Just going to stir it up, get everything blended together, and we're going to cook it for about 2 or 3 minutes just to finish off that pasta. Get all these flavors melded together. And you'll notice the pasta should start to take on the color of the sauce a little bit as it begins to absorb that. Stir that around a bit. It's at this point you want to add your basil, fresh basil. There we go. And we'll start mixing all that together. Oh, lost a tomato overboard, a couple of them. Yeah, I don't have the right tools here, do I? This thing doesn't grab as well as I'd like it, but it's the better tool for the job. Now remember, we're finishing off cooking here, so once it's stirred up like that, we'll let it rest for a minute. Let it cook a little bit. This smells delicious though, I can tell you. I'm going to like it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to top this with some Parmesan cheese. You can use any kind of Italian hard cheese. And we're just going to grate some of that on top. Well, there we have it. There is our dish. Pasta with fresh garden tomatoes. Wow, even without a tomato in my mouth, the sauce that we made from the tomatoes is just sweating those tomatoes out in that olive oil, a little bit of that pasta water, and the onion and the garlic. It's perfect. It's got that garden fresh tomato taste. It's not like a tomato out of a can. It's not like tomato sauce that you've rendered down. It's a very bright flavor, and it's actually made its way into the pasta itself, and that's good. Let's see if I can get another bite without getting it all over myself. Well, this is going to call for some creative editing. So simple, yet very good. I mean, I can see why this is a classic dish and very popular. It's just good. Wow. I find no traces of onions. If you were concerned about onion being in chunks in here, you can't find it. The tomatoes have basically broken down. You hardly notice them until you get one that has a little bit of beef still left to it. You get that garden flavor. The benefit of ripe tomatoes is that they're filled with sugars, they're filled with flavor, and they tend to impart more of what you're after. So that's why, you know, garden ripe is important. Store ripe, not so great. And to think, back in January, we were fiddling around with these seeds, putting them in little hexagonal seed cells and putting them under our lights and fussing with the temperatures and bringing up these little plants and dividing them and potting them up, babying them along, planting them out in the garden, forgetting to trellis them, letting them sprawl, and here's what we get. Wow. You know, part of the satisfaction in this dish for me is that all of the major ingredients, the tomatoes, the basil, the onions, came from my own garden, and that makes me really happy. That's kind of the principle of the thing, right? Eating food that you're confident in eating. It's food that's not been sprayed with herbicides and pesticides. It's, you know, you've taken care of it. You've babied them along. I mean, you can't beat that. Hey, thanks for joining me on Black Gumbo Southern Gardening. I know a lot of you enjoy the garden to table episodes that we do, where we cook our produce, we cook what we grow. I really appreciate your comments and all your tips. I'm a bit of a cooking fan myself, so these kinds of things I really enjoy doing. I love to bring stuff from the garden and to make a nice meal. So if you'd like more of that kind of stuff, let me know down in the comment section. If you want to know how to garden in a small backyard context, follow my channel. If you came to this video just to see the recipe, my channel is mainly a gardening channel, and you can grow these kinds of wonderful tomatoes in your backyard. You can do it. It's not hard. Follow my channel and I'll show you how. Hey, thanks for joining me today. We'll talk to you next time. Happy gardening, happy cooking. See you later. Bye-bye.